Florida isn't the nation's premier swing state anymore. The purple era, it is completely over. The state is now a solid Republican stronghold, but instead of finding stability, Tallahassee has basically turned into a high-stakes laboratory. Two competing versions of the GOP are right now fighting a massive proxy war to decide who really owns the future of the movement. And the wild part? Despite holding a massive legislative supermajority, the government is hitting a sudden wall of gridlock on the very issue voters care about most: property taxes. So, as the post-DeSantis era begins, this internal power struggle is actually starting to stall the exact policies that made the Florida model famous in the first place. That impending 2026 gubernatorial race isn't just a contest for the executive mansion. It is a high-stakes audition. In a lot of ways, it operates as the first real primary of the 2028 presidential cycle. The outcome here is going to test whether the National Republican Party prioritizes the populist disruption of the Trump movement or the disciplined administrative power favored by the current state leadership. The state is essentially serving as a canary in the coal mine for national governance. Whichever philosophy wins out here is inevitably going to shape the national agenda. Section 1. The End of the Bellwether. How the State Lost Its Purple Status. To really grasp the intensity of this current proxy war, we have to look back at the historical shift that wiped out Florida's battleground identity. The political evolution is staggering. Think about 2018, when the governor's race was decided by a razor-thin 0.4% margin. Just 4 years later, that completely shifted to a massive 19.4% victory. And by the time Donald Trump won the state by a 13% margin in 2024, that old bellwether status was effectively dead. Because of this massive structural realignment, the general election just isn't the primary battlefield anymore. The real electoral contest, the one that actually dictates policy and power, now happens almost exclusively within the primary of the supermajority party. Section 2. The shadow primary, the financial arms race. A governor facing term limits naturally creates a massive power vacuum. And right now, an unprecedented influx of money is rushing in to fill that void, igniting a shadow primary well before anyone even casts a vote. The financial disparity is pretty wild. On one side, you have Congressman Byron Donalds representing the America First wing, sitting on a war chest of over $67.3 million. On the other, appointed Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, a key institutionalist figure, with just $400,000. This financial chasm isn't an accident. It is the direct result of national money pouring in to back a very specific ideological vision, all while the state's traditional institutional donors remain completely frozen in a wait-and-see pattern. So that money is backing two distinctly different philosophies of governance. You've got the MAGA model, which Donald champions through his Defending the Florida Dream campaign. This relies heavily on nationalizing the race, prioritizing federal issues like border security and total alignment with Donald Trump. Then, on the flip side, you have the institutionalist model, represented by figures like Collins and former House Speaker Paul Renner. They focus strictly on the mechanics of state governance, legislative continuity, and preserving the administrative brand built up over the last 8 years. It's essentially populist disruption going head-to-head against administrative discipline. This ideological split is heavily influencing early polling. A direct endorsement from Donald Trump acted as a massive catalyst, instantly catapulting Byron Donalds to 54% support among likely primary voters. Meanwhile, the institutionalist candidates, Collins and Renner, are lingering down in the single digits. But there is a huge catch here. A full 28% block of the electorate remains entirely undecided. They are visibly hesitant to commit to the national populist frontrunner, even with his immense financial and polling dominance. That persistent indecision reveals the deepest ambiguity in this entire race. That massive undecided voting bloc is largely paralyzed, waiting to see if a direct heir to the current administration jumps into the contest. First Lady Casey DeSantis consistently leads hypothetical polling with 26% support in a crowded field, and that's despite publicly claiming she has zero interest in running. This unspoken successor dilemma is exactly why institutional candidates are struggling so hard to gain traction. They're basically operating in the shadow of an endorsement that hasn't arrived yet. Section 3. Supermajority Gridlock. When unified power stalls. While the campaign rhetoric focuses heavily on national identity and ideological purity, ordinary citizens are watching their financial anxieties go completely unresolved. You see this internal friction spilling over into actual governance, most clearly in the central legislative conflict of 2026. Despite a multi-billion-dollar surplus and a unified Republican trifecta, the 60-day regular session totally failed to deliver property tax relief. The State House pushed for a total elimination of non-school taxes on primary residences, but the State Senate favored a more conservative, targeted approach that preserved local revenue. The result?
A total stalemate. It's a stark reminder that even a supermajority cannot guarantee functional governance when internal factions are quietly at war.
Section 4. The Radical Fringe, Pushing the Overton Window.
Unresolved economic anxiety and intense primary competition have dramatically shifted the parameters of debate. Highly confrontational elements that would have been unthinkable a decade ago are now entering the mainstream primary conversation. Take the candidacy of hedge fund manager James Fishback, for example. Positioning himself as a radical insurgent, his platform includes aggressive stances like a complete ban on immigration and the forcible removal of Afghan refugees. His most headline-grabbing proposal is a 50% sin tax on Florida-based OnlyFans creators. He argues this would generate $200 million to redirect toward teacher pay and school lunches. Now, economically speaking, implementing a targeted industry income tax in a state famous for having no income tax is highly complex. But the strategy illustrates a broader trend. We're seeing a rising demand for moral policing economic policies that disrupt traditional conservative orthodoxy. Section 5, the Democratic Challenge, Finding a Path Through Division. All of this internal fracturing has definitely caught the attention of the state's minority party. Florida Democrats currently face a structural deficit of over 1.1 million registered voters, so mathematically, a traditional victory is nearly impossible. Yet, they see a strategic opportunity in the Republican division. Their strategy relies on a post-ideological gambit. Former Republican Congressman turned Democrat David Jolly is explicitly targeting the roughly 33% of voters who consider themselves politically homeless. His platform centers on structural democracy, pledging to implement any ballot amendment that clears 50%, creating a sharp contrast with recent administrative efforts to block such measures. Meanwhile, candidates like Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings are focusing strictly on urban affordability. The entire calculation banks on the possibility that a deeply radicalized or divisive Republican nominee will open a narrow, temporary window for a competitive general election.
Section 6. The 2028 Rehearsal, Nationalizing State Politics.
Zooming out, the implications of this primary extend far beyond state lines, effectively nationalizing local politics. The influx of tens of millions of dollars into these campaigns proves that national donors are using this race to pre-vote for the 2028 presidential cycle. And this dynamic is further scrambled by an evolving federal landscape. Marco Rubio's January 2025 resignation to become Secretary of State triggered a cascading effect, forcing new appointments and shifting traditional alliances. Adding to the unpredictability is the potential wildcard entry of former Congressman Matt Gaetz into the gubernatorial race. These moving pieces completely destabilize the traditional institutional hierarchy, ensuring the proxy dynamics of the race remain fluid, reactive, and highly sensitive to national media narratives. We usually think of one-party states as being politically unified, but this transition proves that when one party wins decisively, the battles don't disappear, they just move inside the House. The ultimate outcome here is going to signal whether a massive governing majority uses its power to deliver tangible relief to its citizens, or whether it becomes entirely consumed by the ideological demands of the next national election cycle. So it leaves us with this final thought. When a state moves from a purple swing state to a solid stronghold, does the government become more accountable to the people or just more focused on internal power struggles?
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.